the folks that were the visionaries together said, you know, we think there is a possibility. And they went through all of the public policy advocation at the time. They did an excellent job. They don't get the credit that they otherwise deserve for having it all put together and composed as they did. They went to the General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Virginia. The General Assembly approved unanimously that the crossing would occur. So then they thought, our job is done. But they said, time out. This is not going to be part of the portfolio of the Commonwealth because there's too much risk. So what we're going to do is we are going to create via risk transfer all of the scope of the construction, all of the related engineering, all of the related operations and maintenance to a set-aside risk transfer shell known as a political subdivision. We will have accountability in that circuit. Court judges will appoint the board members, and then resultingly accountability from the board to oversee what is the district. So it's a risk transfer, okay? Long story short, it worked. Why? In 1970, this facility went into default. It opened in April 15th of 1964, and the Series C bonds, there were 3 series of bonds, Series A, Series B, Series C being the riskiest, and having the least worthy lien position on the revenues, they were unable to be paid. So from 1970 to 1986, this facility was in default, okay? Anybody here hold any of the Series C bonds? I was going to tell a story in that vein. If anybody did, at the valley of the default, meaning the very worst position during the default, which was 1976, people traded the bonds for 40 cents on the dollar. And so the purchaser got not only that par discounted by 60%, 40%, 40 cents on the dollar, they also got all the attached coupons, okay? In 1986, we were able to cure the default on our own. No one wanted to subsidize us, nobody wanted to help. So as a result of taking that risk, where there's risk, there's potential return. The tax-free return for those bondholders that decided to take that risk in '76 was approximately 440%. And here's the best part, tax-free.
Are you planning to go into default again soon?
Thank you for having me this evening. You're on the plus week. So, no, sir.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Another question. This thing started in '56. How come they couldn't get anything out of Eisenhower's National Defense Act?
Risk. Risk.
Risk?
Yep. They did not want the risk profile. 17.6 miles, the largest and longest bridge tunnel in the world. So, any other questions?
So you're talking about risk. Was it insured, like Lords of London or something like that?
No, sir. There was no insurance on the revenue bonds. There has been and is today a bridge tunnel property coverage, and it's basically a hurricane policy. So we have a $225 million limit that we shop around the globe. Currently that's placed with Chubb, and we have a $10 million deductible. So, and we, that $10 million deductible of that, we still have to pay a premium of $950,000 per year. So construction commenced in September of '60 and resulted in completion April 15th of 1964. You know, a mammoth accomplishment given the risk profile, 42 months from start to finish. So when we went into default from '70 to '86, one of the things we found is demand amped up. While '95 was the primary reason we went into default, not planned until the late '70s for an opening. It opened early, that's great. And so the traffic that we expected to take the coastal corridor was taking '95. Well, as '95 began to grow congested, more and more people would take the coastal corridor, and then with the build out along the coastal corridor, the route began to be utilized from '86 through '90 much more extensively than we had planned. And so we went back to the General Assembly and said, okay, we have had 75 fatalities across the facility as a result of everything was being contraflow across a 2-lane crossing. So anytime that there was a stoppage due to a flat tire, anytime that a light bulb had to be replaced, anytime that there was a reason to have to stop traffic, it was a huge risk that travelers weren't adhering. They're out looking out over a majestic view, and being able to remain focused became quite a challenge. So the growth in fatalities was evident. The growth in delays was evident. So the commission went back to the General Assembly and said, okay, we're not coming for money. We're coming to have the authorization to parallel the facility, to be paralleled, and the General Assembly was unanimous in their approval. That's usually a contradiction in terms, and said that we had the authority to be able to expressly construct a facility parallel to the existing for the purpose of lowering the fatality rates, minimizing the delays, and stimulating economic commerce. Okay. So once that approval occurred, the design and permitting approval took 4 years. Okay. So design and permitting for a parallel facility that did not include the tunnels took longer than the original construction. Okay, noteworthy.
Sure.
And then the construction with the original in its entirety taking 42 months, the construction took 46 months. Okay, so 48 and 46, 94 months of permitting, design, and construction. Okay. So 46 months to construct, 250 million, 2,591 piles placed, with technology at the time that was incredibly advantageous compared to the original crossing. Just a micro example. The original construction, when the piles, and you can look with me, well, you can barely see here, but if we were closer to the bridge here, the piles that support the bridge, okay, the underpinnings, they, on the original construction, those piles were driven to resistance, which means those piles were taken and frictionally jacked with a hammer until they moved no more than an inch per 100 strikes, okay? That's driven to resistance back in the 60s. You fast forward to the parallel crossing. Each of the pile locations together, piles form a vent, okay? And correspondingly, those vents each have their own location mapping entered into a computer, and a pile dynamic analyzer would identify how deep those piles needed to be taken and installed into the bay bottom, okay? So we have in the bay where we are approximately -300 from the bay bottom before you run into any kind of formations that would be similar to that of rock. So these piles are driven into a combination of sands, silts, clays, and ultimately the deepest piles are in the Yorktown Formation, which is your most consistent civil layer as far as frictional resistance. All of these things you all are aware of. You traveled the roadway, you all are aware because coming down you experienced some of these very same things. Resultingly, became a corridor of statewide significance for the Commonwealth, lack of a viable alternative route. Unfortunately, we had the truck accident last Thursday. There were folks in Virginia Beach saying, stay tuned, we'll advertise what the alternative route is. They don't know the route very well. The alternative is really no alternative, an 8-hour detour. So when you look at all of these combinations, that was why the parallel crossing was advantageously taken and pursued, and results in parallel tunnel construction, which is what we're going to be talking about today. First question, why did you not include this back in the 90s? Okay, the reason is we have champagne taste on a beer budget. Didn't have the capital. We were unable to afford the full paralleling, including the tunnels, in the 90s. Okay, if you just joined us, if you have a question, just raise your hand. We're not going to wait till the end. More than likely, there's something you're thinking of. Others are as well. So the alignment to the west of the existing, what we did is we evaluated the overall pursuit in terms of being able to maximize competition and be able to take and have a sustainable factor that was best practice. What do we mean by that? we have substantial challenges with our existing tunnels. The tunnels themselves were built in Texas. They are towed up the coast. They were immersed 19 tunnel sections across the existing thimble, 18 across Chesapeake. So we have a substantial problem with the amount of steel oxidation that occurs. We are constantly in the tunnels for the purpose of providing maintenance because proactive is key. If you get into a reactive mode, you've lost the battle, right? So we have 1,100 hours of tunnel lane closures per year, okay? The favorite 3 words on the eastern shore of Virginia, if you don't know it, you'll know it tonight, is damn Jeff Holland. Because people get frustrated and they don't understand the importance as to why we have to continue to be in at night trying to minimize the delays during the day to be able to maintain the aging infrastructure of our existing tunnels, okay? I won't get into this in the interest of time. It looks like on the radar that we're gonna have a pretty bad squall at 7:45, so my intent is to have you all out of here. The key is to effectively lead and have a civil project of this nature. You've gotta have a great team that's devoted. We're fortunate in that the team of the district has been devoted and been consistent. There's only one member out of all of that org chart that has departed in a 10-year period. In this day and time of turnover, that is quite an anomaly.
What's a thimble?
What is,
Thimble.
okay, the parallel Thimble Shoal Tunnel, thank you for the question. Thimble Shoal Tunnel is the southernmost tunnel if you were to cross the facility, okay? So number one, we have tunnels because currently this serves as the ingress-egress to the world's largest naval base, Norfolk Naval Base, okay? So this channel is used for the purpose of not just naval ingress-egress, but also the Virginia Port Authority, all of the ancillary ports, and serves 4 rivers coming, no, Baltimore separate, this is all Thimble. So we have this Thimble tunnel that we're paralleling now, and then our next would be Baltimore channel, okay? So to get into the port of Norfolk from this location is approximately 12 miles. Baltimore, if we were here on number 3 island looking over to number 4 island, our islands are numbered consecutively from south to north, 89 miles from this tunnel into the port of Baltimore, okay? This channel is dredged and maintained currently at 50 feet. We're in process of dredging it to 55 feet. This channel on the charts is identified as 50, but it's dredged and maintained 45 feet, okay? And there is a constant battle between the 2 ports in terms of fighting for growth. Currently, the Port of Virginia and Norfolk Newport News are the 4th largest port on the East Coast. Baltimore is like 7th, so. Thank you for your question. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
When you're going under the tunnel,
Yes.
it's always interesting to watch, especially the warships, the big warships,
Yes.
coming across over top of where you can. Do they have special ways of watching windage, and how do you know that they're going to stay in the tunnel?
Okay, so as far as depths that are required, all the military vessels draw the least as compared to commercial cargo carrying vessels that are carrying your bulk solids and your oils and coal. So many of the coal colliers that come in and call on these ports are not able to leave fully loaded because they draw 65 to 70 feet draft wise, okay? But importantly, so appreciate your question, we have to make sure we coordinate to make certain that there's no public that's there on either of the islands to cause any kind of concern with our naval fleet as they ingress egress. So this is a point of critical concern because this is the convergence of vehicular traffic and military traffic. So we work very closely with not just the Navy, but all branches of the military and the Pilots Association. So pilots, not aviation pilots, but we have the thimble pilots that are served by the Virginia Pilots Association. We have the Maryland pilots that are served by the Maryland Pilots Association. we constantly coordinate with them and have a morning rally to identify, okay, what's the CBVT have going on special as relates to construction today, and what kind of special navigational needs are there? So, multimodal. Yes, ma'am?
So is the traffic kept away from that passage or away from the tunnel during that period that the
No, ma'am, but they're not allowed to be on the circumference of the islands. So they're able to continue to travel through the tunnels, but they're not allowed to be on either of the islands. And those islands are fully videoed. So we not only have surveillance, but all the islands are videoed and then viewed by the military as well. So,
You guys have in place, if there were to be say a passenger jumps out of a car on one of the islands, what do you have in place?
so I'm not being sarcastic, I can't answer that question. So, and so we have a regimented protocol. In fact, a lot of people wonder, and some of you may have been stopped before, every 4 to 6 months, we have a joint exercise with security specialists in the area for the purpose of making sure that we are ready to take and react to anything that may come up. Now, most people think, oh, they're just checking for narcotics. No, it's more than, anybody ever been stopped in one of our vital operations? So you would know there's 45 to 50 specialized security personnel, federal and Commonwealth and ourselves, that are very visible at our plazas, at our islands, via the vessels that are surveying the facilities for the purpose of making sure we're ready to react where there to be a concern. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
What's the yellow thing floating near, I think it's on, when you're coming on the tunnel, it's off of one of the islands.
Yep, number 3 island. So what we're doing there is most people just think about ourselves carrying traffic, right? We're carrying all the utilities for the Eastern Shore except natural gas and power, okay? We power everything ourselves. We have our own power facilities as a CBVT. We have all the critical broadband. So that vessel here is measuring winds at 500 feet above mean low water, in coordination with some of the pilot projects that are going on related to wind power generation in the ocean. Okay.
So that's why it's kind of new, because it's related to.
So data is being transmitted to our number 3 island and then via the broadband to for access points with some of the pilot projects that are in motion. Yes, sir.
Do they assemble the sections of tunnel underwater, connect them together, seal them, and then pump the water out?
Are you a farmer? You're wearing a decal.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you
Yeah.
farm?
Yeah, Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Okay. So a combines 19 tasks. The tunnel boring machine that we're going to see a video of combines 26 tasks. So you will find it very interesting, given the agrarian analogy. Yes, ma'am.
So is there any way to monitor when a ship comes through that it's not taking more work? Like it's not deeper than it should be? I mean, how do you monitor that some ship just isn't overweighted?
So all vessels that would have that kind of draft, they're required to be piloted by a Virginian pilot or a Maryland pilot. So regardless of the source or the origin of the vessel, that vessel, even some of whom no one speaks English, is piloted by one of our own pilots for the protection of our waters.
And I was gonna say, so there's some kind of gauge or something on there that they know that it's on the ship?
Yes, ma'am. So that pilot will not pilot that vessel from the ocean channel entrance into Thimble Channel if that vessel is not ready to be maneuvered into what is a very complicated channel that's constantly changing.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
If they would run a sub in there, they'd have to do it on the surface.
Yes, sir.
They run subs underneath the water coming in there.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
You said that the channel is dredged to 50 feet.
Currently.
Is the top of the tunnel at the 50 feet and then there's silt and debris there, or is the bottom
So-
of the seabed here and then the tunnel sits on top of it?
So picture's worth 1,000 words. I have a cross section that
Okay.
identifies the answer to your question.
Okay.
So remind me when we get to that later. Okay. Other questions before we proceed? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I may be getting ahead working on the one parallel tunnel now, and then there will be an additional one at some point.
Yes, ma'am. We anticipate, had we procured for 2 tunnels at the same time, the total proposal prices would have been somewhere between 1.35 million to 1.65 million. We may have had the capacity for 1.35, but it would have been aggressive. We're conservatively minded, and we received no subsidy from anyone. Okay, so we had to make certain that we were able to handle the project identifiably, and we did not want to take that risk. We did not want to, who asked about default? We did not want to experience that default again.
That sounds fairly reasonable, actually.
When have you heard in today's society that an entity that is public is not subsidized? Yeah, we're in. I'll get to you, sir. Hang on one second. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh,
You.
what happened to the first contractor
First contractor is still,
on this second tunnel?
first contractor is still here.
I thought they went into default on that.
People tend to buy the rumor and sell the truth.
It's still the original,
Sir?
it's still the original contractor?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I was just curious, did you bid this out for a fixed price, or was there an option for the second tunnel?
Yep, no problem. So when we went through the slide, I bounced back a while ago. Okay. What we did is we identified that we wanted to be able to have a tunnel that was going to be most sustainable, and we wanted to open it up for competition for the purpose of being able to accommodate a tunnel delivery method that would be able to take and adhere to all of our technical criteria, okay? So what we ended up doing is we had very rigid technical specifications that would allow for a bored tunnel, and we'll discuss more about what a bored tunnel is in a bit, as well as an ITT, an immersed tube tunnel, which is what the original tunnels that we currently operate were. Large tunnel sections, 310 to 315 feet in total length, that were cast in a dry dock. These were cast in Texas. When I mentioned that earlier, I didn't tell a story, and I appreciate you asking the question, sir. These tunnels were cast in Orange, Texas. Imagine waking up in your condo in Galveston, Texas, and seeing a 310-foot tunnel section on the beach outside of your condo. That's what happened. Got into a massive storm like we've experienced here in the last couple of days. The tow was severed. The tunnel section broke away and ended up on the beach in Galveston, Texas. So then that tunnel section was reattached and towed around the tip of Florida into Norfolk, where the final outfitting occurred. And then a separate tunnel section during a storm here was not able to be secured properly. That tunnel section slid 10 feet in its final destination. So the overall design had to be amended during the construction. So fixed price. So what we did is we said technically acceptable lowest price, okay? So we had 6 total teams that were pre-qualified initially. 3 ITT immersed tube tunnel teams. Of the 3 ITT teams, 2 withdrew, and then 1 remained. The one that remained, SKW, Skanska Kiewit Weeks, decided not to propose. At the time, they had larger projects in Florida, in the southeast, that were experiencing challenges financially. They decided their risk profile was more conservative, decided to not propose. Okay? All right, so here's where we are, and I think it's probably a good, let me stop for a second. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video's worth 1,000 pictures, right? All right, so remember that slide. Other questions while I pull in a video for you?
How long have you been with the company?
I'm in my 29th year.
You're not that old.
Time Bay projects, so.
So in this whole project, you've never asked for or never been able to get federal funding for this because it supports the military?
Bring that up a little bit later. I'll answer that question when I get to the funding slide.
Okay.
If that's okay.
So is it true that there are people at the ends of the bridge who ride people across who are afraid to drive it.
Yes, sir.
Is that
So-
true?
Yes, sir. So approximately 100 to 125 times a month, we are taking and we are providing a phobic escort service at no additional charge for customers. Why we do that? Because folks will approach the toll plaza, and I will pull the picture up to show you. I apologize, I had to restart the machine. The toll canopy, I don't know who asked the question, but regardless, Chesapeake Bay Bridge and Tunnel, the far right lane on the north side is lane number 2. We'll have customers who pull up to lane 2 and say, we want to take the tunnel because we're phobic of bridges. They think it's a choice. So they're polite. No, that is no joke. And so we then identify via our collection staff, who are wonderful ambassadors, please, ma'am or sir, please pull aside, and we will accommodate you by driving your vehicle across for the purpose of being able to take and preempt you from having a concern, and then B, any of the traveling public that you're traveling with of having a concern.
So it's not a private entity that people are doing it, it's the bridge.
Correct, and what you're thinking of is the Maryland Bay Bridge. They charge for that service, I think they charge $30 to $35. And it's time, right? Time is money. And that's understandable, but for us, we do not want that to be a barrier to someone identifying that they would like to do so.
And thank you for changing the lighting, because I am claustrophobic, and now that the lighting is brighter in there, it makes me much more comfortable.
Okay, super.
I would truly freak out when you had those dark yellow lights. I would sometimes be in tears while we were under the water.
Well, that's good to hear. We objectively, we have had approximately 10% of customers say it's too bright, right?
Oh, no.
So we have sensed that it's a positive.
It might be to those people, but those
No.
of us who are claustrophobic.
So you may have noticed that we have approximately 2/3 of the lights in Thimble Tunnel that weren't operable. That's a result of a tractor trailer who had mechanical difficulties. Air came into the suspension system while the individual was driving across. It elevated the trailer from 13.4 to 13.8, and resultingly, that company and its insurance are responsible for $1.3 million in damages.
So you're changing the lighting from sodium to LEDs?
We've already changed. If you haven't crossed, when's the last time you crossed?
Years ago.
Okay, yeah, we've changed all of the lighting in the tunnels from high pressure sodium to LED. Yes, sir. As we have across the full facility.
You make it as bright as you want to, because there's a lot of people who still don't use the lights when you come through there.
Yeah. There it is.
You're using TDMs there for boring?
Yes, sir.
How long did you have to wait for those?
How long what?
How long did you have to wait for those?
The TBM? The contractor procured the TBM, and Heron Connect was the winning proposer. And construction timeline for the TBM itself, the tunnel boring machine, was approximately a year.
So for Mission Impossible, didn't they film on the bridge didn't they? And then did that close the road for a while? Was that real?
So interesting story there. What we ended up with, my apologies. I'm gonna have to describe what you would otherwise see in the video.
When you board, I get it late, so I apologize. When you board to the rock,
No rock,
no rock?
no rock, 5 different layers. So you have combination of sands and silts, sand, intermediary layer of clays or sand, and then you get into the Yorktown Formation.
So well, if the video shows it, we'll know, but how'd you keep water out as you board?
So you'll be able to see from the photos that I have, thankfully, given that the video is not operable.
So when a driver drives somebody's car across for them, how does the driver get back to the side where they started?
Puts their thumb out.
There's gotta be vehicles going back and forth all the time. The police have done this. So where you're doing this, you said that no one was allowed to be on, what about that restaurant that used to be there? Did they actually close it when the Navy brought their ships out?
So the Navy, in coordination with herself, would have the armed officers, DCJ certified.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Apologize for that. For whatever reason, to synchronize on the screen, the video is not operable. All right, so this is the launching pit. The launching pit serves two purposes: to launch the TBM. TBM in total is 310 feet in length. The train of the TBM and all of the tasks that are conducted in a synchronous manner had to be able to launch from this pit. What you see here is fiberglass rebar lined concrete for the purpose of this being the breakthrough as to where the TBM would break through and commence the boring. Okay, this is a close-up. This shows the radius. So we have a 43-foot diameter, a 42-foot finished tunnel. So there's a foot of overdredge purposefully. That extra foot of overdredge is there so that we have additional, when you look at the structure of the segments, they're 18 inches thick, okay? Each segment is 6 feet, 6.5 feet wide, north-south, and correspondingly, each segment weighs 20,000 pounds. So for each complete ring, you have 10 segments. Together, that's 200,000 pounds of concrete. And then outside of that, you have 6 inches of concrete that is provided around the segment. So in total, you have a 24-inch concrete mass for purposes of serving as the finished product. We'll show you photos of what they've already constructed. And it has to have 100-year durability, okay? So here on the island, where you all are so exposed from a salt perspective and the corrosion, you can certainly understand to have 100-year durability is something that is considered to be almost non-constructible. Contractor said, hey, you've come up with a very stringent technical spec. We said, hey, we want to make certain we're not having to come back and redo this tunnel in 50, 75, even 100 years can do it. We hope with appropriate maintenance that this will last well beyond 100 years. This shows the main bearing assembly of the tunnel boring machine being lowered. Okay, so Heron Connect was responsible for the assembly. Heron Connect was responsible for the recommissioning, because the first commissioning occurred in Germany, and then correspondingly they're responsible for the first 35 rings. Okay, so approximately 200 feet. When you look here, you see the temporary struts in the basin for the purpose of being able to provide the extra strength that's necessary during the construction. You can see that the shield around the tunnel boring machine is being constructed. A great photo, because here it shows, I believe it's 19 different jacking frames that push against the segments to advance the machine, okay? So they're doing two things. They're taking the segments that are placed for full compression purposes, and they're advancing the machine, and they drive the machine in the related direction the machine needs to go. All right, so what do I mean by that? So the machine, when it starts off, is heading to the northwest. When it gets mid-channel, it's going to be 225 feet away from the existing tunnel at Thimble, and then it goes back towards the northeast. What they do is they're able to adjust the jacking systems to be able to take and drive that machine so that it goes in the direction that it wants to go. They also are able to adjust from the top and bottom adjustments to the machine as far as the elevation they're seeking at all points of the tunnel. Here's a completed assembly as far as the tunnel boring machine main components, the main drive assembly, the jacking frame, and then what we see is this is a night picture looking in the opposite direction. And then what we see is the cutter head that is being lowered into position for the purpose of attaching to the front of the machine. Okay, this is a great vantage point here on the island. So we're looking off to the northwest. What you can see off in the distance is all the construction work that's going on number 2 island. Okay, approximately 180 to 200 total employees. The fishing pier there, as you can see, is the world's most unique construction trailer park at this point, serving as offices for construction personnel. This is all occurring on an island that is very, very tight. So it's another aerial that shows you what's going on, a very tight island. This is the muck pit. So the tunnel muck from the tunnel boring machine conveyed out of the tunnel boring machine to the south, crosses over the roadway. So when you see those two enclosed conveyor systems as you're driving across the facility, as you're riding across the facility, as you look up and you see these enclosed conveyor systems, one conveyance system to the southernmost comes to take all the material that comes out of the machine, crosses over the roadway, and is deposited if they desire to do so in a muck pit. Otherwise, if they're operating via barge, the approximate 600,000 cubic yards of material that will be dredged by this operation then transitions over the cut and onto barges. So this picture was taken prior to that conveyance system to get to the barges being completed.
Were you able to sell that material or keep that money, or is that a cost?
So that was all the scope of the contractor. So they were responsible for the purposes of handling.
Their business.
Handling, and it's being deposited in a Hagerson Buchanan site in Chesapeake. Okay.
How far does it go in a day? Or like, is it 24 hours? And
Designed to go approximately 60 feet a day when they're in full production. Yes, ma'am. Okay, another vantage point. This shows the crane that takes and lowers the segments that are brought onto the island via truck down into what was the launching pit, which now becomes the finished roadway section where folks, as they travel through the new tunnel, which is designed for southbound traffic, come out of the tunnel and into what we refer to as the cut section or the boat section. You get from the tunnel section to being approximately 30 feet above mean lower low water at the elevation of the islands. Okay, so this is a transition zone, just as this is. The difference being that this actually starts further to the south and will finish further to the north on number 2 island. Okay.
So you have quite a bit of room underneath the roadway. Do you use it, put that for anything?
So the cross section that we show, the finished tunnel section, will show you exactly how that's designed and what that consumes.
Okay.
The existing tunnel, we have what's referred to as opposed to a longitudinally ventilated shaft. We have a plenum ventilated tunnel. What that means is we're taking the fresh air that's going underneath the roadway and it's being extracted over top of the roadway. Okay, so 2 different tunnel ventilation designs. So gantry crane as it's being erected in process. That shows the ceremony, the blessing of the tunnel boring machine. Saint Barbara, the guardian saint that was taken and there at the blessing ceremony and is placed in the cockpit of the tunnel boring machine. Okay, there's approximately 20 folks that it takes to operate the machine. It's a worldwide tradition for tunnel boring machines, A, to carry St. Barbara after the blessing, and B, to be able to be named in the name of a lake. Okay, so we had, for a naming contest, we had the schools participate from the eastern shore, south side of the peninsula. Resultingly, the winning name was derived by a young lady who at the time was in middle school at Nandoa Middle School. Her name is Grace Bentley, okay? So she came up with the name Chessie, okay? Identifiable for this machine. When this machine is completed with this tunneling, we expect that this machine will still have approximately 80 to 85% of its useful life left for purposes of being able to work on other jobs. Yes, ma'am?
Can you tell me, during that tunneling process, is there any humans down there, or is it all done by computer?
So there are approximately 20 personnel that are required to be able to operate the machine. 2 10-hour production shifts and a 4-hour maintenance shift.
Thank you.
There's St. Barbara. This is a printout that we get on a daily basis for the purpose of identifying all of the respective outputs from the machine, the face of the machine, the location, the pressures correspondingly, all things critical as far as the machine and its advancement across the scoped identifiable route. We were not specific as relates to this tunnel has to go in this specific longitude and latitude. We said we wanted to be able to have all of these technical criteria adhered to. We left the means and methods up to the experts, okay? We did not self-perform this project because we don't have any expertise. We've got some excellent project managers who work on this project, but we are not in the business of construction of tunnels all the time, thereby that's why we went out and hired this work done by a general contractor. This general contractor, to the contract question we had earlier, is named Chesapeake Tunnel Joint Venture. It's comprised of 2 main parties, Dragados and Chivoni. Dragados is the largest, their parent and their subsidiaries and siblings are the largest tunnel builders in the world. And Chivoni is their technical specialist that performs most of your technical tunneling in New York. Okay, so they're used to ground freezing and correspondingly all of the intricate tunneling that occurs, not just for transportation, but also for other modes, subways, water, sewer, and the like. Yes, ma'am?
Is any of the concrete coming from Cape Charles?
So when the proposal for what we had took place, Bayshore was still operational. When the contractor then did their buyout and all of their sub-procurements, Bayshore did propose. Bayshore was given 2 opportunities to propose. They weren't successful. And then resultingly, with the way that they looked, Skanska, who owned Bayshore, looked to sell Bayshore. Bayshore was closed because they didn't have any suitors, and then the real estate was then sold. So importantly, Coastal Precast, one of 3 parties who own what was referred to as Bayshore, successfully proposed on the HRBT, which is being conducted by Dragados and another partner, Vinci, out of France, okay? So our contractor is one of the principal partners doing HRBT. HRBT, if you happen to go through Cape Charles, you'll see a massive amount of segments that are on the property there at Coastal Precast, and that's being used for the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, which is being executed as well by a tunnel boring machine. The segments that we have were built in Chesapeake by a contractor, or a precast contractor from Ohio.
So I'm sure you get a daily report about how far you said that, you know, that you have a goal every day to make. Will the contractor, if he finishes early, get a bonus?
No, ma'am. But correspondingly, the contractor has $14,500 per day in liquidated damages that are owed if the contract is delivered late, which it will be, because the final, as referred to, completion was supposed to be in early 2023. So they've already surpassed that.
What's the new date then?
New date, at this point, the updated schedule, I think, is the end of 2026.
So I have a question. So if the company that proposed this drug, how do you say it?
Chesapeake Tunnel Joint Venture.
And they go
comprised-
over, so now they're gonna be a couple years over?
They're
Who
good.
pays for those overages? Is it an insurance thing that they have to take out?
So they had every right to have any kind of financial instruments that they would like in terms of their agreement with their parent owner. But as relates to the penalties that are owed directly from Chesapeake Tunnel Joint Venture to ourselves.
Okay, so maybe from the get-go, they knew this might happen and sort of put that money aside for that?
So, good question. There are contractors that are known to be very aggressive on bid day in anticipation that they would have changes that would be executed during the contract. In our case, we've had 5 change orders, I think that total just under $1 million on a $756 million basis since 2017.
I see. Is that Brigaz based in the US or are they also outside of the US?
Chesapeake Tunnel Joint Venture is comprised of Chivoni, which is a New York company, as well as Dragados North America, which is a North American company. Their corporate office is in New York.
I see.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Will they ever bring that little diner back?
You know, it's interesting. We have had more questions about the restaurant than we have about the tunnel, right? So the total scope of that restaurant, when we had that aesthetically redone, was like, I can't remember, $270,000–300,000. And this is a $756 million project. So I always find it interesting, the questions that have been over inundating because people really enjoy it. Where else are you going to eat out in the middle of the day? So the unfortunate answer is where that restaurant was.
It's right there.
Is right there. So this is all an expanded dock. So right here where the new tunnel is where the restaurant is. Okay. So we are going to have the pier that is reconditioned for the purpose of being able to accommodate folks that want to fish channel side. Because where else are you going to be able to go out and fish next to a major navigational channel? And then we anticipate that we'll have other amenities that hopefully are as well received as the restaurant.
That was emotional.
Put that back, so you'll have back. That's my big question. I mean, if you're having people out there fishing.
Stay tuned. We'll get into that detail in
First, you gotta build
2026.
a change proposal number.
No, that would be separate comment. As usual, Kara's ahead of the game. Yes, ma'am.
Now, some of these delays, is that also because of COVID? Does that have anything to do with it?
Okay, so if you break the delays down, why have they occurred? And I'm being objective, not as an owner trying to cast blame on the contractor, not trying to respond to a contractor here with me. So the first reasons, when the contractor went to get the permit, they expected it would be a 2-year timeline, a year timeline, it took them 2 years. Then they had a foundation subcontractor that wasn't performing as they otherwise should. So they went to terminate that subcontractor. So the process of terminating a principal sub and rehiring another sub, that took approximately a year. And then correspondingly, they had a change in design from what they originally proposed. So the way it works for the design, build, procurement, delivery method is the engineer of record has to approve because they are to be the objective quality assurance design provider on whatever design is ultimately built. So in changing the design, it wasn't like all of us huddling in a room for 6 weeks changing the design. So bless you, it's a very sophisticated process.
So what do you drive this beast with? Electric, diesel?
Yes, sir. 34.5 kVA.
I think we got about 20 minutes before we're dumped on.
Okay, so looking at the radar. All right, so there's 750 feet into the specific tunneling. Oh, yes, ma'am. What you can see here are the tunnel segments. that have been placed in rings and are 750 feet in. This is a conveyor belt that brings all of the tailings from the construction out of the tunnel boring machine to number 1 island where it's conveyed as we had described. When you look at the ventilation of the tunnel, the water, the wastewater, all that has to be handled in a synchronous manner. And this is looking down in the tunnel itself to the north where the tunneling is occurring. Currently, they're in the midst of a maintenance intervention for the purpose of being able to remove an anchoring system that was excavated during the process. So they're in the midst of being able to take and remove the components of that. Approximately 3 of the 4 components have been removed. So that's a very careful and methodical process for something such as that. This is a close-up. I mean, it's, as I said to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, multiple scopes all occurring at the same time with the tunnel boring machine. This is looking from the tunnel boring machine to the south, back out towards number 1 island. You can see there, looking from top down, again, 42 feet in finished diameter, interior-wise approximately 39 feet, based on the tunnel segment thickness, looking from inside tunnel segment down to the tunnel floor. This is the jacking system that we described. These are the concrete segments. So the concrete segments are shifted in alignment as they proceed, much like putting in a hardwood floor, right? You're not going to have the same transitions right next to each other. 18 inches thick from top to bottom, width 6 to 6.5 feet wide. Total length is approximately, I believe, close to 11 feet. Each of these segments rather weighs 20,000 pounds. 10 segments to a ring, 200,000 pounds. All right, so design in terms of the construction on the islands, there was the existing with the cover that's over top of the thimble tunnel. So the rock was removed, the coffer dam was built to be able to take and make certain that the tunnel boring did not occur in the wet but in the dry. So all of that coffer dam is then covered with layers of rock and then protected with armor stone. The armor stone thickness of the original is approximately 15 tons on average. The armor stone thickness and weight on the parallel is approximately 19 tons. Here you can see the actual photos during the construction. We're looking north to south. You can see that the increased size of the protection system as compared to the original. These came from Cedar Mountain. These came from the Susquehanna River quarries from the original construction. This looks from the edge of the island towards number 2 island. All that is complete. Tunnel boring machine is approximately right there. Top of the machine is right now at 42 to 43 feet below mean lower low water. Bottom of the machine is at negative 85 feet. Any of the maintenance interventions in the machine have to be conducted at right now approximately 2.5 bars of pressure hyperbarically. So there's hyperbaric chambers built into the machine that allow for the maintenance personnel to be able to safely work on the machine in front of the bulkhead. Behind the bulkhead, it's considered to be earth pressure balancing. That earth pressure balancing allows the construction to continue to execute for the purpose of safety being paramount. Here's number 2 island. So everything that we've done on number 1 island. Mirror image here on number 2 island. The pipe pile almost being completed for the purpose of being able to build a coffer dam on number 2 island. That becomes the receiving pit for tunneling, but for southbound traffic, that's the first part of what you will enter into the new tunnel. You see all the temporary struts during the excavation. You see a close-up look in terms of what's going on. These wall thicknesses, each wall takes approximately, such as some of these wall sections here, 30 ready mix trucks full of concrete. That's the equivalent of 300 cubic yards, okay? So these wall sections are 9 feet north-south wide, 6 feet thick, and go down, the deepest of which go down 120 feet down through the island into the surface of the earth. And underneath that is a massive jet grout blanket to make certain that all of that weight doesn't cause induced settlement during construction.
Jeff, I had a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
We're showing both tunnels. When this is all done, and this tunnel, this new tunnel is open, are you going to do any major repairs on the existing tunnel?
Usually that is the case. We did not want to take and elongate the overall maintenance that was necessary, which would become more corrosive and more expansive of a repair. So we have done that as we have gone through the process to procure this new tunnel, and most of that has been completed. So we'll have some minor adjustments that we make probably, but nothing major as you typically find. Most of the times, new one opens, the old one's closed, right? In our case, we may be closed, but it'd be for an interim period, month to 2 months, as opposed to a year or 2 years. This is looking at the marine works again on 2 islands. This is the MRF pipe pile systems that are being built. This is repurposed pipeline from the pipeline project that was canceled by presidential administration and repurposed for the purpose of being able to take and used here as the structural components of the cooperative system. To the question earlier, what is the new tunnel going to look like? So 42 feet of outside diameter, 6 inches on each side of the, as we talked to earlier, the grout that's placed around the tunnel. You have here the aggregate that's placed for the purpose of making sure that there's no positive buoyancy, as well to serve as the roadway foundation. You have the asphalt wearing surface. You have lanes, 2 12-foot travel lanes wider than what we currently have. You have 2-foot shoulders on each side in the tunnel, which we don't have shoulders, as everyone knows. The Jersey barrier systems, ingress to get into a safe plenum that runs the total length of the tunnel in the event that there is a situation with a fire, smoke inundating in the tunnel, hazardous materials, occupants are able to get out of the vehicles, access this egress corridor, and walk the full length of the 1.5 miles from 1 island to 2 islands, 2 islands to 1 island. Massive drainage systems. Our existing tunnel is crowned, meaning that the water takes and is drained from the center line both ways. In this case, the roadway is drained 2% from the west, we're looking south, from the west to the east. All of the systems that we convey besides just traffic with utility corridors, LED lighting, clearance envelope, we currently have 13 feet 6 inches. The new tunnel will have approximately 16 feet, 15 feet 6 inches. And the longitudinal ventilation. So what we're doing is a piston effect with jet fans that are utilized to take that air coming from 2 islands and convey it with traffic going to number 1 island. We have transition zones on each end of the tunnel that allow us to transition traffic from existing over to the parallel only. If we needed to, Kara's point, close the existing tunnel for whatever may occur, we have the capability to go back just like we're currently doing contraflow in the existing, or all lanes southbound in the new, all lanes northbound in the existing. Questions on the cross section? Okay. Harbor deepening. Somebody here asked, I forget who, about that. Currently, duration maintained at 50, authorized to go to 55. Okay, coming all the way in from the ocean into the port. This total project, your investment, $700 million, funded federal and state combined, for the purpose of being able to be an economic engine for the Port of Virginia. Most people think you build it deeper, all the vessels are going to come here. It's be the deepest port on the East Coast. It's not the case. 60% of the vessel traffic coming into the Port of Virginia accesses 2 other ports. Okay. So if Kelly has something that's actually being delivered to the Port of Virginia for his island creamer, more than likely, some of that other cargo has visited a couple other ports along the East Coast, okay? So what did we do to prepare for that? So our existing tunnel is going to be able to accommodate a draft of -58, because while you're saying you're gonna dredge to 55 below mean low water, there's gonna be over excavation. So we went in and instead of having the cover that we had over the existing tunnel, what we did is we went in and in the shoulders, we excavated the cover off of the existing tunnel. How do we do so? So we're looking south to north. We created a receiving trench, okay? You can see the dimensions in the back. It may be a bit challenging. That receiving trench was 1,500 feet north-south, extended approximately 350 feet to the east of the existing tunnel. So we dredged that pit wide. We wanted to take and have a water injection dredging system to get all the fill off the existing tunnel on outgoing tides. We did this in phases for the purpose of being able to replace the cover that we did have with rock. Why would we replace it with rock? One of our major risks that we have with this facility is anchor drag. Okay? So we did not want to expose the existing tunnels to anchors being drugged over any of the sections and correspondingly close the tunnel, which would lead to us being closed. One tunnel being closed means we're closed, and it would take us approximately 2 years to replace that specific section. Okay? All right? So this project, everything we do, so if you think about any of your repair projects, and sometimes you may moan and groan about that repair project at home, think about doing it out here on the open water. It is exponentially more difficult. It's exponentially more risky. And importantly, it has to be prudently managed to make sure that you end up with what you had scoped to begin with. Okay? Questions on the water injection dredging process? All right, that shows the rock layer. So in total, we're now ballast, well protected, ahead of the channel being dredged to accommodate it in its entirety. We want to get this done beforehand, separate from the parallel tunnel project. Okay. We talked about North Plaza, Easy Pass. What do most people think of when they think Easy Pass?
Discounted.
High speed.
Just discounted fairway.
And so what we do is we prepare traffic to stop. Why? Unfortunately, we have 50 times per year on average where we have to inspect vehicles due to weather restrictions, okay? We don't want to have to do that, but it's for the public safety, okay? So if you have traffic engineering and traffic is trained that they can continue signing at 55, means you're gonna go what, 65 or 70? And then all of a sudden you're stopping traffic, we have a nightmare. So we prepare traffic to stop every time they cross, correspondingly to be able to accommodate safety inspections. Last year of the audit, fiscal year 2022, you can see total revenues comprise 90% of our revenues, lease revenues 2%, investment income 8%. One thing to work hard for your money, another to make your money work hard for you, right? So importantly, we try to maximize the income on our investments, drive down our debt service, okay? No subsidies, as I mentioned earlier. This shows you the commission's policy is to maintain our tolls at average of similar toll facilities in the region. This matrix, I won't bore you. Most people, when they complain about the tolls on the CBBT, they don't consider we are responsible for 21 miles, okay, in the most tumultuous marine environment in the world. So this breaks it down to identify if your vehicle, you're paying 0.61 without a discount, 61 cents a mile, okay? If you're Baltimore Harbor Tunnel, you're paying $2.72 a mile. You're any of these other facilities, you know, whether it's a public-private partnership such as Downtown Midtown Tunnel, a ferry, you'd be paying approximately almost 2.5 times what we currently pay. If you're a Class 75 rate payer, 26 cents per mile. What's that? If you travel the facility 30 trips in 30 days, one way, then you are eligible to cross the facility for $6 each way, okay? All right. And then on top of that, the commission, because we can't discount tolls for anything other than commutation and frequency of travel, the commission sets the toll rates, and then the commission themselves, the board members, who are basically volunteer, donate to an educational toll fund because they want to see students that come through our community college year be able to continue their education in this design. So they have $35,000 that they overall appropriate to help students, okay, separate from what we charge in tolls, to be able to continue their education, okay, for any purpose, as long as they're getting certification. And medical tolls. If someone has a need to cross a facility for necessary medical purposes, that for services that aren't available here on the Eastern Shore, Commission wants medical tolls to be provided. They contribute $130,000 a year for that purpose that is utilized by the public that can't get those services here. We're blessed to have Riverside Health System. Was, when it was acquired, the worst hospital in the system. Now it's the best. 4-star rated, better than any of the other hospitals in the system. But if you can't get what you need at Riverside from an acute care perspective, you can cross, and if you're eligible, it's managed by rural health because they are used to dealing with folks, sliding scale, that need that type of assistance, then medical toll is available. A lot of information there. Questions? Tolls.
Back to the federal, because it's military involved with that, how come, what's the purpose of segregating?
All right, so gotta be careful not to be partisan here. The massive amount of infrastructure money that was passed by Congress for the purpose of providing infrastructure monies in this country, we applied to advance Chesapeake Tunnel. Thimble, we're in the process of managing the construction, but we're always looking ahead. And we applied for approximately, at the time, I believe it was $500 million. And because of two primary things. Number one, we were not able to identify that the project was going to end up being environmentally additive. We're taking, and we are boring a hole in the bay bottom for the purpose of the tunnel. And we are not in any way, shape, or form providing any kind of social, I can't remember the proper term, social maximization that would be provided by the infrastructure policy. So we were not considered to be, I've used cost benefit. The federal language specifically identified it as beneficial cost.
So connecting the Eastern Shore to the mainland was not social?
Was not eligible. The approach we used, and again, I'm being objective, the approach that we used was to say, we have a project. We've already gotten the environmental approval to build Chesapeake. We've already done all the borings geotechnically to be ready. It's referred to in the industry as shovel ready, that imminent. So we went to the gentleman that is the CEO of the Build America Bureau. And he loves the Eastern Shore. He's very interested in what we do. And he said, hey, I apologize. Great guy. The Secretary of Transportation is leading this on behalf of the President, and it doesn't qualify. All right, so, the other thing that most entities do is when you deal with tolls, most, such as the downtown midtown tunnel, they adjust their tolls every year. We don't like that because a customer gets used to the profile of the tolls that they pay. So the commission back in 2013 said we will have a 10% toll rate schedule adjustment once every 5 years. Okay, now we're to be criticized because, as you all know, what have we just experienced in the last 18 months? 11.8% inflation in the last 18 months. So 5 years, we will actually, every 5 years, adjust tolls by 10%. That next toll rate revision is January 1 of 2014, or excuse me, 24. The first was 2014. Revenue uses, I won't get into, given the timeline, all the specifics. Let me know after the fact if you have questions about where the toll monies go. Here's the key. The Commonwealth, which is considered to be fairly conservatively managed, budget growth over the last 10 years is 87%. What's our budget growth been? 25%. Okay. We constantly are challenging our employees, not just managers, to find better ways to do what we do, to be more effective, more efficient, and operate as a business, not as a government. Okay. So that credit goes to the employees in terms of being able to maintain that envelope. Okay? True interest costs you may find interesting. Not anything we did, just taking advantage of the markets that were derived at the time. Our true interest cost is approximately on all debt, 3%. Some of our longest debt goes out 50 to 58, 2058, 38-year life, and those bonds at the time that we fixed them, fixed at almost 3%, and we were able to reduce that during the downturn in 2020 down to 2%. Weather restrictions, we constantly have to evaluate and change our weather restrictions. Why? Because box trailers, the weights of box trailers. 2016, the average box trailer weighed approximately 23,000 pounds. We have trailers today that are manufactured empty that weigh 12,500 pounds. So as a result, more of a sale effect. So we have to take and engineer our restrictions to be able to make certain we're looking out for those who are greatest at risk. We now have an advisory level. If our average wind speed is 35 miles an hour, speed limit is lowered to 45, and no passing. Is that necessary for passenger cars? No. But we can't have signage that says, okay, if you're a commercial truck, pay attention to this, and if you're a car, pay attention to this. So, all the information as relates to what we do is on our website. If there's anything additional that we didn't discuss tonight, more than likely you'll be able to find it there on the website. Thank you again for the opportunity. Thanks for the questions. And please come up to me if you have additional questions that you otherwise didn't